Yeah, Jasmine, welcome to Unscripted, the Serato podcast. Thank you for coming today.
I love any excuse to come to Serato headquarters in LA, so thank you for having me.
Well, you're welcome. And how long have you been in LA now?
Secretly, 3 years.
Why
I don't
secretly?
I don't advertise it. I just secretly moved because so much of my life is in New York, and so I'm back and forth, and I'm truly bicoastal. And I think when you're from the East Coast of the U.S. and you finally make that move to the West Coast, there's this identity that you don't want to lose. You don't want people to forget that you're an East Coaster. You want people to still know that you're in the mix and you're in the scene. And also, as you come to the West Coast, you don't want everyday people that you meet to forget that you're from the East Coast. You know what I mean? And you're not going to take certain, you're not going to accept certain behaviors and language. So I say secretly because I also was just trying to figure out if I was going to stay here permanently. And now I absolutely love it. And there's something extremely special about LA, and especially people that are from LA, natives of LA, and the cultures that have arisen from here, and the history and the political struggle. Of course, the weather and the landscape and all that too. But I love LA.
So those are the positives.
There's so many positives, and LA is going through a renaissance, at least from what I see, and there's also a lot of migration from New York. So, half of my homies are all out here, and we're hustling just as hard as we were in New York, but with the sunshine and with some mountains and a healthier lifestyle and a better quality of life, in my opinion. Especially with the way New York is turning into a financial capital, and the ability for artists to live and thrive normally, functionally, is not as possible as it was 10 years ago. And so LA, even though prices have increased so much in the past 5 years here, there's still pockets where artists can cultivate their career and live affordably and still be in the mix. And so I support that.
You're talking a lot about a migration from the East Coast to LA. Do you think there's kind of like it's becoming a music center in much the same way New York was maybe in the 90s?
I think 400%. Everyone in music is here. We're all here. We all have home studios. We're all at each other's home studios, and if it's not your home studio, there's a place that you can easily access. That the way the Patch House now has base camp, Serato headquarters, there's different places and there's so many actual studios that you can use and rent. And I think that with music labels, I think with film and Hollywood, with everyone kind of cross promoting their brand into different entertainment avenues, this is the place to really do it.
It seems like there's a lot of opportunity, and people are coming out here to collaborate or find people to collaborate with and make music and get their music heard.
Yeah, 100%.
So, in saying that, so you lived in New York, and you born in New York?
Born in Philly.
Born in
What
Philly.
up, Sonny? Ew, ew, ew.
And so when did you move from Philly to New York?
Oh, man. Well, first I moved from Philly to Boston, and I went to Emerson College, and I started DJing on the radio there when I was 17. This is where DJing really kind of came about. However, when I was 15, 16, I became very obsessed with turntablism, and I was getting Qbert DVDs and Mixmaster Mike DVDs and watching DMC championships and just being like, oh my God, if I was ever a DJ, I'd be the coolest person in the world. And my homie who ran the underground hip hop section at the local record store, he was the one that I bought my turntables from. I worked for a year doing coat check to buy my turntables, and then I interned at Turntable Lab for 6 months to a year to get my first Serato box discounted. So this is this is 2006, 7, 8, around there. So So Boston was really my breeding ground for cultivating my early DJ career, especially because I was on the radio, and radio just taught me so much as a host, as someone that could connect with mass amounts of people, and how and what those avenues were, whether it's behind the microphone, whether it's behind a camera, whether it's on stage. And so Boston, and then Brooklyn after that.
So, being from Philly, was there a DJ influence from Philly that you brought to Boston, or?
It's funny we talk about this because I'm starting a new monthly in LA called On and On, and I'm starting it with Badi, who's from The Wave, and it's a tribute to neo soul.
Okay.
And we're partnering with OK Player, and it's really an ode to my upbringing and to his upbringing as well, because at that time the OK Player movement was at its height. Neo soul was it was the most influential genre of my life. At that time, Music Soul Child had just dropped his first album. Jill Scott dropped her first album. The Roots were called the Square Roots. Like Black Lily was a thing. The Jazzy Fat Nasties, a clothing line called Rope-a-Dope, and I was like the first one to go get that hoodie. I mean, I was so and I was a bit of an activist as well. And so this conscious wave of hip hop and R&B just took me over as a teenager. And that's kind of the vibe I've always brought in my life, whether I've delved into different genres or represented different scenes. There's always something super soulful, I hope, that I express. And I think also being from Philly, there's no way that you can't be soulful. Like it's in the water, the water. And my mom is from Philly, and my grandfather's from South Philly, and my grandmom is from the Bronx. So I just think it was I just think I was birthed with soul, and Philly just cultivates that. There's a level of rawness that it still has, and especially as a teenager and sneaking into clubs and just trying to be where the music was. That genre and that time period was so influential. But I think I bought like a instrumental DJ Scratch CD. I was a little backpacker, I was like a baby backpacker, but yeah, the main DJs at that time were like Qbert and Mixmaster Mike that I would follow. This is like right before A-Track, I think, won his first DMC championship. And it was a time, man, because it was still, I remember the documentary Scratch had come out, and that was it. That changed my life. And Emerson College is so fucking liberal. I can curse, right?
Yeah.
So fucking liberal. I love telling this story because I can't believe it at this point. But I walked in as a 17-year-old and I was like, my major, I'm going to design my own major, and it's going to be called the Music Activism Quest. And they were like, okay. So for the first 2 years, like that's what it read on my paperwork. And I was like, why would you let a 17-year-old name her major like a mixtape? Like, can we get a little bit of professionalism here? But anyway, it eventually evolved into a degree in music production and social marketing. But it really was this combination of audio, marketing, and politics. I feel like I've gone off on a tangent.
It's great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because this is Emerson's in Boston?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's also where you had your radio show.
Yes.
So was the radio show part of your major or separate from
that? Was separate, and that was my whole damn life.
The radio show?
Oh, the radio station, yeah. I eventually became the program director. I managed like 100 students. We had 25 different genres of shows. At that time, we were the #1 college radio station in the country, so we were competing with all the major Jammin' 94.5, and we competed. And it taught me, it taught me everything. And we had artists come in every week that were like our reggae show alone, Rockers, we would have like Capleton and Baby Sham and Damian Marley.
Wow.
And then for hip hop, we would have, everyone from Def Jux and a lot of like underground hip hop artists that wanted to be exposed and have a larger market. And then I remember my show, I had an R&B and soul show. We had Eric Benet, Jaguar Wright, Guapale,
wow.
The Platinum Pied Pipers. So we had major people coming in because it was a really influential platform. And man, did that shape me. for my whole life.
And so you were hosting and DJing and program directing and everything?
Yes. I give this example of what I did when I was like 16 in my hometown in Pennsylvania. I used to put on this event called the Hip Hop Political Fusion. And and I would convince the local courthouse to like give me their courtyard for a night, and I would have like a punk rock band, and I'd have hip hop conscious MCs, and I'd have Green Party representatives, and then I would do this like choreographed dance to a Mr. Lift song called Home of the Brave, which was like super political, and then I'd have a PowerPoint presentation behind me that I made protesting the war in Iraq. And I say that example because that's literally like what I still do. I kind of wear all the hats, and I really, I would say I'm OCD and a control freak, but hopefully in the best way possible that an artist can be, because I just like to really curate the entire experience from top to bottom. And I have really strong visions about what that looks like and what it sounds like. And that I'm also a creative. And so whether it's dance, DJ, rapping, something, it's always come out in a expressive form to help get my point across. So I'm always an artist and a producer.
Let's talk about that for a second. I think one of the things that I really like to touch on is creative vision. I think that a lot of people will say, I want to be a DJ, and they just go, I want to, what does that mean exactly? Do they just want to play in nightclubs? Do they just want to, DJ for an artist? Do they want to play on the radio? And you can, if you have a vision, you can really create whatever that is in your mind. And I think that that's something that I'd love to hear you talk about. You said you had a very clear vision. Mm-hmm. Is that something that just came naturally to you, or did you have to kind of work to find it, or is that influence from your parents? Or
I think I came out just like a bossy ass bitch. And my mom will attest to that. I think I just started bossing people around and was like, nope, this toy is going to go here. And this Barbie Jeep is here because this is my movie. I don't know where that comes from. If we want to talk about past lives and stuff, maybe there's something there. But I've always just been extremely inspired and picky. And so if I'm inspired, I'm very picky about where that inspiration goes. But I think that there's kind of two things that you touched on, which is, there's creative vision once you've kind of established your role as an artist. And then there's, how do I make this dream of getting into this industry come true, right? And when someone says, I want to be a DJ, those are awesome questions, actually, that you just asked. Like, do you see yourself on stage for an artist? Do you see yourself in the nightclubs 5 nights a week? Do you see yourself at festivals? Like, what is it that inspires you about it? Or what's the root of it? Like, let's be honest. Like, do you see yourself as just being a socialite influencer that can make some extra money? Or do you see yourself, practicing in your basement alone every single night for 3 hours because you just want to get so good? Like, what is it that sparks that creativity in you? And then I think once you determine that and figure out which way you want to step into the industry, then you can go into your creative vision. Like, okay, well, what do you want to represent? What's in your soul? What genres do you navigate to naturally? Like, what is it that you want to say beyond DJing? Because at this point, everyone can be a DJ, and the amount of DJs have probably quadrupled in the past 10 years alone, let alone 20 years. Like, that's a whole nother conversation that all the old heads will have a lot to say. So now you can't even just be a DJ. It's like there has to be a whole mission behind it. Or are you a producer as well? Or are you attached to a clothing brand that wants to also, you know what I mean? Like, it's there's so many ways to use DJing as a vehicle, and I guess it's about deciding which avenue you want to take, which path you want to take, and then what does your creative vision really represent. And when you kind of have those two ideas down, you can learn what your next chess move is and how you want to navigate, and which scene do you want to start showing up to, which parties, like which artists or agencies do you want to just make yourself available to, which other DJs do you want to shadow, like who do you want to take some classes, at like Dubspot or Scratch Academy, stuff like that. And all of those accessibilities really were not there like 15 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, when I was really inspired as like a teenager. And so now the possibilities are truly endless and the technology is so much easier, you know? And I think that when we talk about culture, and again, I'm going on another tangent, but you know, this is what happens when we talk about music. I think that when we talk about culture and technology, right? I love having like this debate with the homies because whenever we advance technologically, how much of the culture and the craftsmanship do we lose, and how much accessibility do we provide for everyone? You know,
It's a
where
really good point.
and it could be a long debate, you know. And I think that with anything like like that's even the photography industry. Everyone's a photographer now because of your phone, and but with DJing, there's obviously so many more elements. Just like a photographer would say, there's so many more elements to capturing the shot, to working a crowd, to learning a crowd, muscle memory, encyclopedia brain of decades and genres of music. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, definitely. I think we were just touching on, the music technology, and I think we were just about to get to a place where I wanted to ask you about, you know, understanding an encyclopedia knowledge of genres, but those genres also, you need to understand the nuance between them, right? Mm-hmm. Like I think, you know, you just were talking about how you grew up and you really loved neo soul and, you know, the OK Player and a lot like Jazzy Fat Nasties, the Philly soul. Yeah, I mean, Philly was like ground zero for a lot of that.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And from my understanding, and then to understand how to play that music and what that music really is, versus just soul music or just R&B, there is a difference. And I think being a DJ, right, it's kind of a responsibility to understand: do I play dancehall like this? Do I play house music like a hip hop record or not? You know, and how do I play hip hop in New York versus hip hop in Bay Area or something?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of differences.
I often say that I'm a music anthropologist. And I think that a good DJ is a culture and music anthropologist. Because it's the study of people, it's the study of subcultures, it's the study of rebellion, it's the study of migration, it's the study of humanity. Mm. Because music normally comes out of some wild shit happening, or the organization of tribal communities. And so when that really interests you, you're gonna look for the connection in everything. You're gonna look for the nuance, and you're gonna look for the history, and you're gonna want to step into another city and be like, well, why is it like this? And what is it about this? You know, when you go and DJ in Japan at a dance hall party and like Mighty Crown is kicking your ass and winning every sound clash, and you know, and you're wondering how dancehall culture migrated, you know, to Asia, and this is all music and culture anthropology. And if you respect it enough and you study it in a way that's respectful, that's what makes you a great DJ.
Do you think that's something that you've learned, or do you think that's something that music is teaching younger people, or people that maybe didn't understand the nuance of those cultural movements? For example, you know, I grew up in New Zealand, and I love rap music.
Right.
But now I learned a lot about, you know, American, you know, civil rights movement, you know, socioeconomic politics and things like that.
Yeah.
Because of my love for that music.
Right.
Which I've always thought was a great gift and a great thing that I got from learning about this music. I liked it. I couldn't articulate why I liked it.
Right.
But by liking it and, you know, wanting to understand it more, and not understanding even like the ebonics. Yeah. Or the language. Yeah. What does that mean? You know, and having that being broken down was really enlightening. Yeah. Do you think that's one of the things that's continuing to be passed on from different genres?
I think that the diaspora coming together and being accessible to everyone via the internet, I think it's actually shifting people, and without them even knowing it. I think it takes a real nerdy person like myself and you to analyze it in this way and really break down cultural norms and talk about music theory and all the shit that I love to talk about. But I think the power of music is that all of that is happening with just bringing different people together in one room or having people listen to a different genre that's from another country that they never heard about, you know. I think it continues to do that, yes, just off of the magic and the science of music itself. And if we look at Afrobeats, right, and how the explosion of popularity in Afrobeats in America, and we look at the connection from Caribbean music to Afrobeats to baile funk, and we're looking, you know what I mean, like this kind of indigenous drum pattern, and how it's hypnotic and it's infectious and it's contagious and it makes people happy. And I think that without people really knowing, oh, where did that necessarily come from, they're like, okay, this reggaeton kind of sounds like this Afrobeat song, or like this calypso song kind of sounds like an Afrobeat song, and with the popularity of that getting into like top 40 mainstream music, I think it's affecting more people that maybe would not have been so open to different music genres and styles from other countries. So it's kind of the vehicle, you know what I mean? It's the universal language. It's like the secret method to bring people together, and that's why I've devoted my life to it, you know, from a young age.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting. You just talked about, you know, Afrobeats. You've talked about dancehall. You talk about reggaeton, and
basically my favorite things to DJ.
They are, yeah.
Yeah, you know, R&B is in there too.
Yeah.
But my music duo with Mellow X is called Electric Punani, you know, and that's for a reason. You know what I mean?
and so that's what you guys focus on for Electric Punani, those main genres there?
Well, it's funny. We started in 2008. So we've been a duo for a real long time. And back in New York City at that time, Mello had gone to a party at 205 Christie Street where somebody was playing dance hall downstairs and somebody was playing electro upstairs. And he had this, like, you know, epiphany moment in the middle of the stairway. And he swore that, like, the beats matched up, like the tempo matched. And, you know, he's Jamaican, so he grew up listening to reggae and dance hall. However, at the time, I mean, and continue to today, I'm like the reggae dance hall head, you know? And so he came to me like, hey, I want to start this like reggae electro party, and like you do the reggae and I'll do like the electro, even though he's the Jamaican one. But I was like, yeah, let's do it. And then we were thinking of a name, and we thought of like Electro Poom Poom. That was like the runner up. And then Electric Punani, and it was like, you know, the seas parted. It was like a golden moment in our life. And our goal initially was to combine dancehall and electro music and to have this super mashup.
That was really quite an advanced
concept. Yeah, and you know, it's Major Lazer, I think, came out like a year or two later, but that's no surprise because the Diplo rhythm, which was one of my favorite rhythms he's ever made, was like really him combining electro with, like, I think Spice was on that track, Vibes was on that track.
That's right, and he also had Vibes Cartel and a couple of Brazilian people too from the baile funk.
Yes, who I forget who they were, but
bad.
Right. So, but at that time, it was still relatively new to be kind of combining these genres in a New York City nightclub. But luckily, at that time, that type of mosh pit crowd was so common, and so you'd have everyone from like the old Rasta heads to the skaters to like the posh meatpacking people to us, you know, and it was just a wild night, and we would play all different genres. And since then, we've been very dedicated to the hybrid sound of the diaspora, you know, and like really experimenting. And now that we've produced original music for a couple of years, we have a track with Daneo, we have a track with The Wave, we have a track with dancehall artist Popeye Caution, and we have a lot in the works as well. And all those songs are really dedicated to that mashup culture. You know, how many influences can we combine in one so that we almost make a brand new sound? Nothing is new under the sun. But if you can have something that speaks to you, it can still be original, you know? Yeah,
definitely. And I mean, it's also interesting, you know, you talk about those those genres, Afrobeats, dancehall, and reggaeton, and the dembo rhythm. That's consistent through all of them.
Yeah.
And that seems to be like a common thing now. It's pop music, right? You've got big, like Justin Bieber on a dembo rhythm.
Right.
It's like, that's kind of crazy.
I mean, a part of me is like, well, of course.
Yeah.
Doesn't that speak to your root chakra? Can't you feel it in your gut, you know? Doesn't it do to you what it's done to me since I was a kid?
And consistently, though, even this year, we've got Taki Taki and lots of...
I must have had Taki Taki on repeat for like 2 days, which is what happens. But that's something with like Azuna's nasally voice and how perfect it matches these beats. I mean, it's just like it's a perfect match. But yeah, and these are some of the biggest songs in the world, and I think that mainstream music was catching wind to this like a couple years ago. But I always get into the conversation of like, well, you know, is it appropriation or is it like good because it's exposure and it's like opening people's minds to different rhythms? And that's an age-old debate as well that I don't necessarily have the answer to.
But how does it make... I mean, you've obviously been there very, very early on since 2008 with Electric Panani. How does that make you feel? Do you feel like that was something... I mean, I know that Dave Nada was doing something...
Oh my God, love Dave.
Yeah.
Moombahton. Oh my God, Moombahton changed my life. Moombahton changed my life. He knows that too. We're friends. Shout to his new label as well.
Yeah?
Hermanito label.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shout out Dave Nada.
Yeah, pioneer.
Yeah, and so it was because that was around a similar time, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you guys, I mean, you must have felt some sort of like ownership of that or a contribution to that, and to see it fruition into what it's become must feel kind of interesting, right?
Yeah, I think it feels. I think you got to be careful with like ownership.
Sure.
And your ego, because like the shit we were doing in 2008, 2009 when like Spank Rock and Ninja Sonic were like the first like blipsters, you know what I mean? Like they were making it cool for black men and women in the hood to be punk. And not that hasn't happened for decades. We talk about the band called Death in Detroit and
great documentary on them too.
So incredible.
Wow.
Yeah. But at least like in Brooklyn at that time, at all of these parties, it was like young black and brown kids who were just mosh pitting and crowd surfing and being punk as hell. And then you look at that influence and how it's changed. And it's kind of like, I was watching the Rebel documentary about hip hop in Asia, 88 Rising.
Okay. And
I was thinking about this concept of ownership. And how we get so attached to ownership in our cultural identity, right? And for some, that there's good reason, because people will take those elements, add them to their repertoire, and sell those, you know? And it's kind of been happening since the beginning of civilization, if you want to really get into it and talk about colonization and whatnot. But when we talk about these cultures that have such heavy identities, mainly for black and brown people around the world, and how do we celebrate them appropriately versus when people take those elements and make money off of it. So to circle back to like a pop hit with Justin Bieber, you know, and his hit goes off, but then what about the artists who are making this type of music every day? I try not to get caught up in ideas of like, well, we started this or you started this, or that's your thing, because I feel like those who know.
Yeah.
And you don't own anything, especially with art. Like you make it and you release it. And that's it. You really don't own anything like in this lifetime. You know what I'm saying? Like you own your choices and how you react. That's about it. But you don't, you know, like, yeah, you can copyright and patent things and then you technically own it. But in terms of like art, it gets really tricky, because I think the moment that you want everyone to know that you started it or you owned it, or is the moment that you hinder yourself. you kind of have to be free with it.
Right.
You know what I mean? But at the same time, especially living in New York for so long, like we give credit where credit is due.
That's a really good point. Yeah. And I think it's to that point, do you think what you guys did and that combination of sounds, could that happen anywhere but New York? I mean, it feels like New York has a certain melting pot.
It probably was happening everywhere. You know, like as soon as some people caught wind of us, especially with our mixtapes, we would make one mixtape a year of like our favorite songs, and not a playlist, like a mixtape, like with interludes and sound bites and like
hip hop stuff,
all that fun shit. And that's when people around the world started finding out about us. And so there'd be like a Berlin party where they're like, hey, like we're doing something really similar. You guys got to come play. Or in South Korea, like, hey, we're doing something kind of similar. You got to come play. Like, or Hipsters Don't Dance in London. They're like, we're doing this party as well, like with the heat wave. And, you know, like you guys should really come play. And I think it actually was happening around the world. It's just that Mello and I are like, you know, we're loud about it. We're very loud about it because we're East Coasters. But I think that we've met so many amazing people throughout the world who share the same interests and share the same influences. So I don't even think that we did start it. I just think that we were a moment in time that offered the platform and the community and the connections. And now we've evolved into a music duo versus just a DJ duo. And so now when we produce original music, we're kind of bringing all of that into our own sound and giving you examples of what's in our brain and hoping that those songs go super far and wide.
And can we expect a upcoming release anytime soon?
I don't know. Mel's about to have a baby, so I'm about to be an auntie. Shout to Corey. And I think maybe in the fall, but I'm trying to give him some space because it's such an awesome time, you know, and it's like I don't ever want people to miss out on those moments and overwork themselves and get trapped in that artist freelancer life. Well, I have to always, you know, it's like actually you need a balance, you know what I mean? And I think it's important to have friends and partners around you that can support that, you know?
Very much. But you guys are also doing a playlist for a regular updated playlist?
It's called World Index. It's on Spotify. And that we've devoted our time to is like we come up with a playlist every single month. And I know that sounds simple, but for us, for the fact that for 7 years we made a mixtape every year, and like those final songs, those final 30 songs were like, they had to represent us, you know, in the best way. Like that's kind of how we feel about these playlists. And now we do these contests where each month we accept submissions from different artists and say, hey, submit your music. If it's on Spotify and we like it a lot, you'll be our contest winner. And that, like, I was like, I don't know who's going to really like hear us on Spotify or hear our playlist, but that, like, we get so many submissions every single month. And it's been happening now for like a year, I think. And I think the coolest part about that is like, okay, these artists and producers, they get us. They get exactly what we're talking about because they send us genre bending shit all the time, you know? And I think that in of itself is such a testament to, I guess, the work that we've put out, the vibes that we've put out, the music we've put out. And so you kind of understand the essence of where we're coming from.
Mm. I just want to jump back a couple steps here and talk a bit about...
You know, I just know my tangents are everywhere. And here's the thing, when I listen back to myself and I'm always like, why didn't you just answer the question that they asked? And you went on 4 tangents. So take it back.
I love it.
Pull up the tune.
But we went from Philly to Boston and then Boston to New York. And New York, like what change was that like, you know, from Boston? You finished your major and then you moved to New York?
Yeah.
And then the influence of New York, like when did that come in? Because it sounds like to me, if I'm getting the chronological right, we got R&B, neo soul, Jasmine, and then we moved to New York, and then it got really, you got into Electric Panani and started making that whole sound. So did New York bring that out, or was that something you already had from, you know, when you were younger?
I'll connect some dots. I was always moving to New York. I still haven't told my mom this. And I'm like, when are you going to tell her? But I don't like to worry her. But when I was 16 and the day I got my license, I drove that little Honda to New York City from Philly, and I drove back. And I drove down the financial district. And that's the day I learned how to be a Grand Theft Auto New York driver. And I wasn't with anyone. I didn't tell anyone. But New York was such a symbol to me. And it was always New York City. And it always expressed like ultimate freedom to me. I was always trying to be in the center of like where everything was happening. If it wasn't for Emerson and it being such a dope college, so liberal with amazing facilities and that radio station, I would have gone to NYU. Those are the only two colleges I applied to. So I was raised on strictly classic soul. James Brown, Aretha Franklin, Otis Redding, Wilson Pickett from my mom. My dad is from Indonesia, but he's super musical. He could sing, could dance. He's the shit. And then neo soul and underground hip hop really shaped me as a teenager. But that's also when I got a hold of a Vin Rock and Shortcut dancehall mixtape.
Oh, was that
Which I recently like tweeted or Instagrammed him, and I was like, "This one, thank you." And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Oh my god."
Yeah, yeah, because that I think I know the one you're talking about was a triple threat.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
like red and green cover.
Yeah.
So that was like that and Buju's album were the first times that I had discovered reggae and dancehall on my own. I had heard Bob Marley before, but didn't grow up in any Caribbean communities, wasn't friends with any, Jamaicans until I really got to New York. But there was something about reggae and dancehall, even as a 15-year-old, that was like, oh, this feels like me, And then when I go to college, I spin underground hip hop for 3 years, and then I do R&B and soul. But at that same time, we were managing the reggae show, and so I knew every song, like roots rock, dub, dancehall, raga. And we had every artist come through. But there was something about dancehall and reggae that I just had known in my soul from before I came to this earth. That's all who knows? I may have been an old Jamaican woman in a past lifetime. That's what my friends like to speculate. But who knows? I just know I connected with it deeper than anything else. And so that's why once I got to New York, I was DJing everything, but the reggae and dancehall was a priority. And Mello and I just kept getting booked to DJ together or getting booked to host stuff. And Rice and Peas was a party with DJ Gravy and Max Glazer. And I remember I did their flyers. I tried to do their flyers to make some money and be at the party. And Micro Don hosted, who's just one of the best toasters, MCs on the mic, period.
Max Glazer, Federation Sound?
Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was a huge influence, in terms of learning that New York scene,
Because there's a connection, right? Jamaica and New York, kind of.
Oh, all day.
Yeah, there's a big dancehall thing.
Well, a lot of Jamaicans immigrated to Brooklyn. Just the same way a lot of Puerto Ricans live in Uptown. The same way a lot of Jamaicans in the 50s and 60s migrated to Camden, London, the UK.
Toronto too.
Toronto. Yeah. So there's these pockets in which people bring their culture in the same way most people immigrate. They're like, all right, we don't know shit about that country or that city. All we know is that we know 3 people in this one place, and that's where we're going to go. We're going to figure it out. It's like my dad. It's the story of a lot of our parents, you know what I mean? And
that they bring the community up.
And they have to, because how else are you going to move somewhere so foreign and you're trying to make a better life, and you just need one tiny connection to help you. And what is that going to be? Okay, we know one person. It's in Idaho. I don't know what that is, but we're just going to go.
They seem to be doing okay.
They seem to be doing okay. And so that's, the Jamaican community, the Caribbean community is so strong in Brooklyn and New York. And you really can't you know, at least at that time, and I'm pretty sure it's like that now, but I don't think you can really DJ a dancehall reggae set unless you really know what you're doing.
Well, yeah.
That was the pressure back then too. Like,
and that music moves really fast from, you know, the rhythms, the different versions.
Like every day.
Yeah. Do you find it hard to stay up on all those?
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that at least from like the late 90s, early 2000s, like all the major artists were on every rhythm.
Mm. That's
you know,
insane,
like,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that like a lot of them who like really broke through, I mean, primarily like Sean Paul, it's hard to find them on a rhythm these days unless it's like a producer that they really fuck with, or that, you know, or just a beat that they really wanted to get on. And so now there's like so many new artists that I hear. A lot of them are great, and it's just a lot of sifting.
Who are some of like the big? Well, some of your favorite artists that are Jamaican reggae artists right now?
Oh my, well, Coffee is number one. You could put the air horn behind this one. I started going to events now, and I'm like, pew pew.
That's your new air horn?
That's my new air horn. People are like, who is this girl? You know, Coffee to me is like the savior of the universe.
So young, 17, right? Or
19 now,
okay.
yeah. But she's got such a good head on her shoulders. Musically, she's like divine, and she's here to like, you know, really spread a message of love. And I haven't been this excited about an artist, I think, in Jamaica since like Damian Marley. Like, I get excited about a lot of artists, but in terms of like, hey, can I see you really like changing the stereotypes for Black and brown people around the world? Great. You know, like, how positive can you keep it and still get everyone in the club singing your music? Word, because that's not easy.
Wow. Yeah.
And it's not popular. So Coffee, man, I mean, there's the classics, but in terms of like, I love all the females. I love Spice, Tifa. I still love Lady Saw, Tamika Marshall. She's from Guyana. She's awesome. Angela Hunt, soca artist, I love. And then there's like the gully artists like Alkaline, who I love.
Crazy voice.
Yeah. He's also got that he's got that Azuna nasal thing working for him. So yeah, that's just a few.
And Mixed Pack Records also in New York. Do you?
Dreyskull,
yeah.
Dreyskull, Jubilee, It's the Large, you know, like that's all family as well. And Dreyskull is another really legendary dancehall producer, but also one of these people who's like bridged the gap. Like Max, Dreyskull, they've been able to be in this scene for so long, and they've been that bridge, you know, which a lot of times I think is tough, because I think with a lot of other countries, when people try to come in and like, you know, take a photo in some cool neighborhood, and but are they really like trying to contribute to the people who live there? Or are they really trying to connect dots so that people can have exposure in the States? And I think that those two guys have done such a great job in being that bridge.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of that Popcorn.
Oh yeah.
Album, and he just got signed to OVO and stuff. But
right,
it's a great thing that I felt like Dreyskull he seemed like he was working really hard with him and Vibes, bringing him to like the U.S. and kind of giving a bit of exposure to them, right?
Yeah, for a long time. Vibes is still locked up at the moment, but he's still putting out music. So
I don't know how they do that.
I think he records a lot of it over the phone. And they work out the sound, and but I do not quote me on that, because I'm not there. And I'm not receiving these vocals. It would be nice to get, you know, a verse in my email, but it hasn't happened yet.
No, fair enough. So when you moved to New York and you started at Lecture Punani, you were also involved with a TV show, is that correct?
Yeah, so I was also always hosting, whether it was on air or you know, on TV, camera stuff, behind the camera, on camera, like this. And at the time, MTV World had asked me to host for them and do some artist to watch interviews. And at the time, I was touring a lot internationally, and I was like so influenced by Anthony Bourdain, as a lot of us are for many different reasons. And at that time, I had pitched to MTV World, and I was like, okay, I'm traveling like here, here, and here. Why don't we do a show? It's like a DJ culture travel show. And they said yes. And we shot a couple episodes, one in Singapore, one in Montreal, one in Paris, where we really got to, yes, I was DJing. And so you got to watch me DJ at whatever club or party. But I also was linking up with like a local artist, and they would bring me to their favorite restaurant and like their favorite place to get vintage clothes. And we were getting a real inside look into these subcultures that I'm always talking about, or that I'm always interested in finding out about, and the things that like a lot of us DJs do naturally, but on the low. I wanted to make a show about that, and have you get like this inside underground look to different scenes around the world. So, and that was something that I truly loved, and I continue to do in different ways.
So did that come out of Electric Punani, like you guys touring that kind of thing, or?
That was just me.
Just you, yeah.
Yeah, like I was DJing. We were DJing internationally as well, but I was also DJing a bunch around the world, and it just seemed like a great fit, and it was at the time.
What were some of the highlights of traveling, the places that you felt a real connection to, or you felt something special about?
I think Singapore was wild, wild. I think in a lot of other places in the world, people celebrate being very weird and experimental. The hype, the Hollywoodness, it's not, at least I'm not exposed to really those different scenes. Like for a super Western metropolitan city, of course, you're going to find stuff like that. But I think a lot of people are very happy in these underground like parties and just doing weird, wild shit.
What kind of?
Just the genre bending that I'm talking about.
Okay.
And like you'll be in the middle of Shanghai at this cement cave. This is where we DJ'd at one point, and the DJs are just mixing garage, dancehall, dembow, hip hop, stuff that you're like, I didn't really know you knew about this. You know what I mean? Like, and that to me is just so fascinating. Or they're adding like another element to it that I've never heard, and that that's like the in real life form of digging in the crates. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you see how connected we all are. You're like, oh, okay, you do the same nerdy shit that I do. This is wonderful. Like we're gonna be friends. And it also, again, is a testament to the power of music. And like you could completely disagree on everything else, right? But if you like that same song, there's that one point that brings you together where you have that connection.
You're friends for that moment on the dance floor.
You at least see each other as equals in that very second. And that has to be a catalyst for everything else. Because in this divisive culture that we're in right now, I don't know what it's going to take for a lot of us to sit down and truly listen to each other and understand each other. And music, again, has always been that like secret gateway drug that allows you to just completely open up no matter who you're around.
Okay, this is going to be a bit of a left field comment.
Let's do it.
What do you think of like Lil Nas X?
I don't, man, I guess I haven't done like enough research on Lil Nas X.
But just the song.
Oh, okay.
The Old Town Road.
I really like the video. I think the video is smart. The newer one. I know there was like an original one.
I actually haven't seen the.
Oh, okay. The one with Billy Ray Cyrus.
Okay.
Where he like wakes up in the hood and they're like, "Who is this?" And he's on the horse. I'm all for it, And it's funny. I was watching this video about like the original cowboys in the U.S. were black, because I think someone was making a comment, even though everybody makes a comment from every direction, but they were talking about like, cultural appropriation of the cowboys. And
serious?
Yeah, I mean, it's the internet. They're gonna make a point for anything, and that's totally invalid and false.
Yeah, because we were in Houston like 2 months ago, and we went to Screwed Up Records and Tapes, and there were cowboys, and there were African American cowboys.
Yeah, there's cowboys in Compton.
Yeah, is there?
Yeah.
Wow.
A lot of people that have horses, farm areas, and even just the history of America. Like, I'm for it. Is there something that you were like thinking of that you wanted to ask me? Like,
Well,
do I like the song?
Yeah,
Or-
I mean, do you like the song?
I think the song is cute.
Yeah, it's fun, right?
Yeah.
I think it's more, I guess, to your point, of here we have a song that essentially crosses over. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like the biggest song
True.
right now.
Yeah, yeah.
But
And
the-
the significance of that, kind of, right?
Yeah, and here's a song that, and it, you know, was in the country charts. They took it off, which is very sad, and weird.
It was number one in the country charts.
I don't know
and
if it was
then-
number one, but I know they did. They're like, we don't want to put this in the country charts. It's an R&B song or a rap song.
Oh, interesting.
And then there was a lot of, and that's when Billy Cyrus jumped on the remix because he was like, well, no, I'm for this or whatever.
Oh, I wonder if Miley had that convo with Pops, or if he found that out on his own.
Well, yeah, I
Interesting.
mean that's another conversation because Miley did the whole thing and she got very successful with Mike Will and
Right,
that.
right.
But I think to your point was well, here's a song that can essentially bring people together and be
Right.
like, hey, we all like this song, you know,
100%.
let's just vibe and maybe
Yeah, and I think that sometimes I have to also get out of my head, which is like always deep in the world of injustice and how do we fight against that, and kind of look at, you know, what you're saying, which is like, because I guess I'm always like, all right, well, this person is saying that and I got to defend that and this is my opinion. But it's like, okay, let's look at this overall. Like, we have a young Black man who is making the number one country song in America with one of the biggest legends of country music co-signing him. Like, that's beautiful.
it's progress, right?
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And not to mention, like, you know, yeehaw, what is it? Yeehaw energy is like totally trending right now.
Is it?
A lot of fashion brands are doing, like, you know, the whole cowboy cowgirl theme. And so I think that that's a great example of people coming together under the sake of music, and it being infectious. And you're going to have people that have their opinions on it, that, but at the same time, if it's number one in the country and you have so many different people coming together, and, you know, country music, I think, is still like the number one selling music in
Is it?
America, in North America. And why not? Why can't we tap into that? And why can't we do collaborations? And why does it have to be, you know, 95% white customers and listeners and concert goers? Like, where is that? Where is that room for collaboration and evolution? And maybe this song is the beginning.
Yeah. Well, I do think that's going back to another thing you kind of talked about is interesting, is that here's a guy who has no real history with any other songs. He's just kind of come out of the blue, and he's been able to make a massive song. And you look at a lot of artists that come from the United States, and they don't necessarily get the appreciation in the United States right away. And I'm not taking a shot at the US here. I'm just saying it's funny how you look at somewhere like England, which, you know, a place like England that adores US culture, and then in a lot of ways will sell it back to the US
Right.
repackaged,
Right.
and that's been going on for years. Like, but it's like, the England and Europe, in a lot of ways, seems to like, adopt it and early in a way, and then.
I remember doing an interview. I had a podcast with Spotify called Ebb and Flow last year, and one of the people I interviewed was JID, and he had just got back from touring Europe, and he was just telling me, like, the amount of love and insanity that was there was, like, you know, doubled from the US. And it wasn't that he wasn't popular here and wasn't having crazy shows, but it was just on a whole nother level. And I think the appreciation for R&B and soul in particular, especially if you want to talk England, there's something in the water there with them.
Like K-Tronada, same thing, like huge, massive there.
Right.
And then, you know, it's like, it's weird. And Garage is like this attempt at like almost Miami bass. You know, maybe I'm taking a bit of the leisure. That's probably, I'm probably going to get
I see the
slammed for
connection. All the purists in the comments, like, you don't know.
that. But you know, even drum and bass, right? Like,
For sure.
I think there is like elements of, it's a culture clash again, and it's something that's own and it's unique and it's theirs.
Yeah.
I'm not I don't want to offend anyone there with that, but there's definitely like elements of hip hop and things like they're taking from US breakbeats.
I
And then
mean,
changing them.
every genre is an evolution. Like roots reggae was trying to copy doo-wop. Like
Right.
ska, they were trying to copy doo-wop.
Wow.
But they didn't get the one guitar note right. And so it was like ticka, 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 you know, like, and it became ska.
Wow.
Ska goes on to have a second wave and a third wave. Bands like No Doubt in Southern California, skater culture relates to ska. Like
Sublime.
Sublime,
Yeah.
let me not forget Sublime, you know. So we look at like we look at DJing, you know, and you've got essentially three Caribbean men that start hip hop. They start DJing
In New York.
and they're already toasting in Jamaica. You know, like a DJ in Jamaica before it got to, you know, New York was somebody on the mic, like while playing a record, you know. And so Grandmaster Flash decides that he wants to use the turntable as an instrument. He's experimenting, like, but he's also bringing the influences of his family and his upbringing, and he's also compiling it with everything that's happening in New York City at that time, which is crazy shit. That unless you were there or your mom and dad were there, like, you're never really gonna know what that was like at the time, you know? So it's always an evolution of people, like, combining cultures. That's life, you know? That's humanity, which brings it all back to this music anthropology topic that we're saying. And so Moombahton, Dave Nada, has to spin a quinceañera, you know? So he slows down reggaeton music to like a 108 BPM and says, "Oh, this sounds fly," you know, and then starts making music like that. And then Munchi starts making music like that. He's not from the U.S.
Where is he from?
I think he's from Europe. Narrowing that down, I want to guess. I don't even want to guess. Let me not get it wrong. But you know, his remixes, and then there's this little baby Moombahton wave. And wherever that goes, maybe that was the thing that really influenced this kind of like slower, dembo influenced syncopation. You know what I mean? But all of these things add to each other and
Cross-pollinate.
Cross-pollinate. Great word. And then the more people create new music, being influenced by all of this, you get new genres.
And on that, the new genres is you touched on it really briefly, but I really want to bring it back because Afrobeats, as you'd mentioned earlier, is like exploding. It's like it's another level. Yeah, like your involvement with that, with Electric Punani and so forth. Like you're kind of. I mean, you played with Walshy Fire last month as well.
Yeah.
Walshy just released a bang record.
Yes, which is every song on that record has a dancehall artist and a Afrobeat artist.
Right.
Purposefully.
Yeah, so how do you feel about this explosion of Afro pop or Afro beats?
Right. I mean, it's nothing new. It's just new to North America. If you listen to like Afro beats from like the 70s, oh my God, it's so beautiful. It's equivalent to like us listening to disco. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of similarities. But I, for one, am all about the culture clash and about bringing communities together and making it popular to be knowledgeable about different people. And if that's through music, if that's the vehicle, let's get it popping. But in general, like, I think that those collaborations are so important because without them, we're not really getting people to collaborate in other conversations or other ways, you know?
And if you were to suggest a couple songs to somebody who wasn't familiar with an older Afrobeats artist, or who would be your?
Oh shit!
Well, just a couple.
I don't even know if I don't think I have artists. I just have songs that I've heard.
Yeah.
That people like, whose parents are from, you know, the diaspora, from Nigeria, from Ghana, and they're like, listen to this. It's from the 70s. My dad used to play it. I'm like, this is amazing. But I didn't like write down the record.
What about new Afrobeats artists? Who were the best ones that you see right now?
Well, I guess the most well-known one would be WizKid. Mr. Easy is up there. Burna Boy is really taken off, super taken off. There's this girl, Tennille, who's super sick. I don't remember which exact country she's from. But Vogue just wrote a piece about her, which is really sick. Santi with his song Rapid Fire.
Santi?
Santi.
Okay. Not Santi Gold.
No, but Santi.
Okay.
So like half of Santi Gold, but not the actual Santi Gold. Who else is super sick? Those are like the main ones that I think tour a lot. Yemi Alade, she's super dope. Yeah, those are like the main ones.
And with your playlist, are you highlighting a lot of these artists? Like,
Oh, yeah.
So it's a good place to check them out. Some of your top
Yeah,
picks.
because we try to have an array of like everything from like the newest in Afrobeats and dancehall, in jazz, in R&B, in hip hop, kind of the way that we would DJ a set. We, it could be anything from like a Burna Boy new record to a Little Dragon new record.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And with the playlist, you're kind of giving people an opportunity or providing like I guess a runway for them to get some exposure. Do you feel that it's really important as a DJ, or as I don't really know how would you describe what you do? Is it because I feel like you're much more than just a DJ.
Yeah, but that's a big part of it, so that's fine, and I'm proud to be called a DJ. It was my dream at age 15, so it's all good.
But yeah,
but like breaking new artists.
Yeah, just just like kind of being a role model. Like I feel like a lot of, just my relationship with you is I've always seen you as so much more than just a DJ. You do a bunch of other things, and I'd like to talk about them too. But you provide kind of like a role model to a lot of people. I believe. How important do you think that is in what you do as a DJ?
I think everyone's prerogative is very different. And I think that because I came from kind of like an activist background, I always cared about people and how they were going to connect and how they were going to treat each other. And that comes from my upbringing, and that comes from falling in love with music, and it comes with I don't know, having a sense of responsibility for humanity and for my platform now. But it's what I've been doing since I was like 15 and 16. I've always been trying to figure out the injustice and see how as a people we can come and solve it. And music has always been the easiest route and also the most attractive to me. But that has always extended beyond just the music, and it's extended to community, and it's extended to how we educate each other and how we ride for each other and how we stand up for each other. That's always been my MO. Like I essentially went to college for it. And so I think that that's been a piece of me, maybe becoming a role model to others. Then there's also the factor of being a woman in this industry. And now it's much more common. But that was like the number one question I got asked in 2008, 2009. What is it like being a female in a male-dominated industry? And so I think that also came with responsibility, like, and learning the double standards early on and learning how I was going to gain respect the minute I walked into the room, because I knew that everyone initially was going to be like, all right, well, they got a girl DJ. They just wanted like eye candy up here. And I go into like beast mode when I can feel that somebody thinks that, and I always have something to prove. But that's almost to really push the status quo, and hopefully that makes it easier for other people, that come after me. So I think I'm lucky that it's caused some positive vibrations in the form of a role model. I think that that's a blessing and a really fortunate thing. But I know that not everyone is on that wave and not everyone cares. And I do think that we are in a time period where you really have to fucking care.
Yeah.
And I've always been a bit of like a holistic hippie in terms of like environmentalism and politics and all of that shit, And so whenever I get into a conversation about music, we're probably going to dive into a deep conversation about humanity and what's right and how we can help people and each other. But now more than ever, like, it's so necessary. And if you're able to kind of just live life without having these conversations, it means that you're just so privileged and so isolated, and that's not good right now. You
No,
know,
yeah.
it's going to not be good for you in the end either. So,
It's gonna make it harder.
I mean, we have so much work to do, and we have to do it really quickly. And it's going to take the masses to make these shifts possible so that we can like survive as a species, so climate change doesn't kill us, but also so that we don't break out in like civil war, which I feel like can happen if we're not, you know, using diplomatic ways from the local level to the federal level. So world politics, you know what I'm saying? Like the way we produce and manufacture items, and this all connects.
Totally.
Yeah.
I've actually, one of the things that I noticed on your Instagram, which I was pleased to learn about, and I learned a lot from, was actually your sustainable Sundays.
Oh, is that? I never know, like, who cares about that?
Well, yeah, it was really enlightening, and I was like instantly drawn to it. I was like, oh shit, what can I learn?
It's so funny because I'm such a nerd, and I normally like only like nerds. You know, I only trust nerds. If you're a nerd, we're good. But that, you know, I've always been about that, but I never really talked about it in my brand. You know. And so now I'm trying to see how I can bridge the gap and make these conversations about sustainability cool to people who don't care at all.
And that's a lot of people.
Because they don't have to care yet,
Yeah.
you know?
It's
But if you go to a landfill, or if you're studying this stuff and you see how much plastic is in the ocean, if you really look at like how when climate change rises, the people that suffer are poor Black and brown people around the world. And if we lift the environment up and we lift the poor people in the world up, as simple as that sentence is, we will all flourish immensely. Like, you talk to a scientist, a politician, an economist, a nutritionist, like a doctor, you're gonna see the connection between like everything, from the quality of our environment, to the quality of our bodies, to the quality of community, to the quality of income. All of that shit is connected. And so I wanted to at least just start an Insta story series every Sunday and just talk about one topic and make it like fun and goofy the way I am, and put all my gifts in there, and, you know, but if I can just do one topic, and if one person is just like, okay, yeah, okay, let me like make sure I just recycle this glass and plastic today. Even if that happens, like, great. We have to start somewhere, you know? But I actually want to dive into that a lot more, because I feel like it's always kind of been reserved for this like one type of crowd. You know what I mean? And it's not really cool. That's why I like Megan Thee Stallion, right? And she said eco-friendly hottie, right? And I was like, bitch, we need to be besties. And she's like doing a beach cleanup in a bikini and being and online saying like, everybody become an eco-friendly hottie. And I'm like, oh,
That's amazing.
like, you know. And so, you know, and I have friends that like work at farms or are vegan chefs in LA, and they're from the hood, and like I want to talk about that, you know. And we don't talk about food deserts. Like, a food desert in a community is that's for a reason. Like, the accessibility to healthy food is not there for a reason. And like, and look at the how many people have to be have poor health, have low access to healthcare, like low access to education. It's all connected. And so it's just time to be aware of it. But I really appreciate that you like my sustainability Sundays, because I really care, and I want people to care.
Yeah, I think it says a lot though, as opposed to just talking about it. You know, like you're actively doing something about it, I think. And that's what I kind of was trying to get at with being a role model, is that you have a platform, or we all have access to social media and how we use it.
Right.
Because this is another thing I think is a really important topic to talk about, is, you know, you talk about the divisiveness that we're living in, the climate that we are in right now. And social media, it's played a role in that.
Oh, for sure.
But it's also the platform.
It's also brought people together.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to know how you feel about that. Like, do we use it for good, or it can be used for both, right? It's quite it's a weapon in some ways, and it's also
it's the wild wild west, right? And it's and you kind of get you attract what you put out. So Unity in Color is a global photography series and a movement and a platform that showcases solidarity for women's rights and equality. Started out as just one photo. In January 2017, Inauguration Day is coming up. I'm thinking about Trump going into the office and Obama leaving the office, and I'm like feeling sick to my stomach. And I use social media for everything, for showing you what gigs I have, to like what things I want to support, to societal messages, to sustainability Sundays, everything, right? It's a very big form of my expression for my brand and for my personal beliefs. And so I wanted to just post a photo on that day that was going to make me feel better. That was like the premise.
That's how it started?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm like, all right, I want it to be a women's shoot, and I want us to all wear the same color gradient. So I'm researching like colors of older feminist movements, of the divine feminine goddesses, and and yellow and gold just come up over time a lot. And so I say, everybody wear yellow and gold. I invite 25 women, and then 50 women showed up. And that photo, the power of that photo, I just had like this premonition the night before we posted it. And I was like, because it was just called Women's Shoot. And I'm like, we got to give this a name. I need to make a website. What if other people want to do a shoot like this? I just had this like lightning moment. And so I stay up till 6 a.m. I call my closest girlfriends. We come up with Unity in Color, make the website, drop it the next day. Within a week, I had 3 different people from different cities saying, how do I do this in my city? And so then I didn't realize at the time, but I had devoted my life to like starting this nonprofit basically. And I co-produce every shoot. We've produced over 40 shoots worldwide. So we just launched Jakarta, Indonesia, Tokyo, Japan. We've done Trinidad, London, Berlin, so many places in the US, from New Orleans to New York to San Fran to Kansas, and it's taken off, and it was an accident. I didn't mean to start this whole movement, but what I realized was, okay, when you see a photo of people and they look so fly and so stunning, and the photography is top notch, and everyone looks like they match, and you've got people in there that are gay, that are disabled, that are trans, like that are 75, that are 2 years old, but you're like, wow, that shit looks fly. That little moment is representation, and it changes a person's mentality, because all their prejudices, they don't even know what they're prejudiced about in that moment, because they're looking at something that inspires them and that feels good. So that alone is like the essence of Unity in Color. It's of showing you what intersectional representation really looks like. And it's grown so much. There's panels, exhibits, that I produce all of it.
Yeah, you've done a lot of them around I saw the one recently you did in Seattle as well.
Seattle, yep. Seattle was last year.
Oh, my bad.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Yep. But if you scroll, we've done Hawaii. I've done a lot of talks at different museums and different places, bringing in people together to talk about this whole intersection between like art, activism, and representation. So that's another thing that's on the
But that's a good use of social media for.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
See, so once we start talking, but that experience, like on social media, it attracts so many great organizations and great people. And that's how most people find out about the movement, because they see the photo and they're like, I want to do this in my city. Let me hit them up. Let me look it up. And that's a great example of how social media can create communities that really support each other and that are super positive.
Brings them all out to one cause.
Yeah, and the way the algorithms work and the way people search, that's why it's kind of like whatever you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. And if you're trying to look for trolling energy, you're going to attract trolling energy, And if you're going to respond to every single crazy comment, you know what I mean? It's going to turn into like an entertainment show for your followers. So you kind of have to set the boundaries of how much usage you want to be on there and what type of content you want to put out, and how much accessibility people are going to have to you.
Yeah.
But, it's still so new and untamed that there's no real rules or formula, and we're kind of all learning as we go, and we're all addicted to it because it literally is like instant stimulation every time. There's something new that you're going to see every time, and then there's the idea of getting more likes every time, and that is like as addictive, I think, as sugar.
Oh, for sure.
Smoking. You know?
Mm-hmm. On the social media topic, podcasts are also, we started doing these because there was a demand for doing them. And, people want to listen to people talk about, interesting things.
Yeah.
And that's great. It's what's great about this whole situation is that we've got someone like yourself who's a very talented DJ, but also does all these other like aspects of things that you're passionate about, which you obviously knew about when you were, a very young person, and you went to school for it. And I just think that, do you do a podcast too? Is that correct? Or
the Spotify podcast?
The Spotify podcast. Yeah. So, I think that's another, vehicle to kind of spread the positive message or inspire people. And I thank you for coming and talking about these, very important things that, you're passionate about, and, can hopefully inspire people to learn about and be better at living.
Yeah, and thanks for having me. Again, I love coming to the headquarters and just seeing all the new toys and technology that you guys have. But also, Serato was such a big part of my life because when I was transitioning from DJing on the radio to DJing in the club, Serato had like just come out. And so I didn't have to, bring records to the club. You know what I mean? And I could, I don't know, just be a pioneer in this new digital wave, but still honor the old school essence of DJing. I kind of was like right in that middle, and I just appreciate everything you guys do for the DJ community and making it accessible for people to learn and to come and test things out and to just kind of meet more people that they can learn from and that they can connect with. So thanks for having me, and thanks for understanding my mission, no matter what platform or shape it takes.
Well, we wish you the best and the most success with that, Jasmine.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Okay, let's go DJ.